Hey guys, we are starting our operations on functions unit. We're going to start with adding and subtracting functions, and we're going to just start with some skills that you guys already kind of know, and we're going to simplify as far as possible, if it's possible. All right, so on this first one, you'll notice there's a 2 in front. Hopefully you guys remember to distribute. So we're going to take that 2 and we're going to multiply it all the way through. So this is 2 times 4n squared. That's 2 times 4 is 8. And then n squared doesn't change. And then 2 times 3 would become plus 6n. And then 2 times negative 4 is negative 8. Because none of these have exactly the same variables, we can't combine anything. So this is as simplified as this one's going to get. All right, so over here, the first thing I'm going to do is distribute my negative 2. That's a negative 2 right there. So we have 3x plus 2x squared. Nothing exciting there. And then negative 2 times x is negative 2x. The negative 2 times 3 is a negative 6. Okay, and if you notice, these have exactly the same variables, so I can combine them. So negative 2x plus 3x is an x, a positive x. So I have 2x squared plus 1x. If you want to put the 1 there, you can. I'm going to put it in red so you know it's not necessary. And then minus 6. Now, if you notice, everything is different. So I have an x squared, an x, and no x. So nothing can be combined. So this is as simplified as it can get. All right here, there's a negative in front of a parentheses. This is actually a negative 1 that we're going to be multiplying through to those two things. So this 2 remains the same, plus 4x remains the same because there's nothing multiplying by those. Then we've got negative 1 times 7x squared, and we get negative 7x squared. And then negative 1 times 3 is a negative 3, and then x. So now if you look again, we've got things we can combine. We have two x's that don't have squares, so we can combine those. So 4x minus 3x is 1x. And so I have 2 plus, and then I can just write x if you want. You can put plus 1x, and then minus 7x squared. Now if you look again, you'll notice that everything has a different variable. There's no x, there's an x and an x squared, so nothing can combine. So that's as simplified as that can get. All right, now we need to remember how to do evaluations of functions. We did this at the beginning of, I think it was quarter 3, might have been the end of quarter 2. I'm unsure. Anyway, so this is just where we take the number shown and we plug it into the one it shows. So this is f, so we're going to look at f. And everywhere we see an x in this equation, we're going to put that 2 there. So 2, and then instead of x, I'm going to put parentheses 2, and then plus 3. And then I would take my handy-dandy calculator, which I have to let load, and I'd plug this whole thing in. 2 times 2 plus 3. Or you could realize that 2 times 2 is 4, plus 3 would be 7. So this equals 7. All right, so on this next one, we're still looking at the f function because it says f, and we're going to plug in a 5 this time. So this would be 2, and then in the parentheses, I'd put the 5, and then plus 3. And I think my calculator's finally up, so let's try and use that. Okay, so I'm going to do 2, parenthesis 5, close parenthesis, plus 3. And I hit enter, and I get 13. So this equals 13. All right, so on this last one, notice that we're now looking at g. So here's my g function. So everywhere I see an x here, I'm going to plug in the parentheses with the 5. So I'm going to do parentheses 5, because we have a 5 to plug in. And then this is squared plus 3. So I pull out my handy-dandy calculator. I'm going to do parentheses 5, close parentheses, squared plus 3. And I hit enter, and I get 28. Okay, hopefully that was a good review for you guys. Some of you were like, duh, I already know that. And some of you were like, we learned this. Yes, all of this is stuff that you've been able to do for most of the year. You've got this. All right, so what are we learning today? So I can operate on functions, so like a whole equation, using addition and subtraction. And we're only going to make it to slide 9 today, and then tomorrow we'll finish it off. All right, so here's slide 3. It says, given f of x equals this equation, g of x equals that equation, and h of x equals that last equation, we're going to plug in this different stuff. So right here, I'm looking at equation f, and I'm plugging in 3. So this would be equation F. And I'm plugging in 3 for x. So this would be 3. And then I do my parentheses, 3. I'm getting that 3 from there. Squared plus 2. And I literally take out my calculator. I do 3 parentheses 3 squared plus 2. And I get 29. All right, so on this next one, I'm going to plug in 9 into my g equation. So here's my g equation, and I want to plug in 9 for x. So this is going to be 2, and then in the exponent, I would do parentheses, 9, close parentheses. So I do 2, caret button, parentheses, 9, close parentheses, hit enter, and I get 512. Okay. And then on this last one, we're going to look at our h function, and we're going to plug in 6. So here's our h function. And everywhere I see an x, I'm going to plug in 6. So this is going to be parentheses 6, close parentheses, and then I want this squared. And then I want plus parentheses 6, close parentheses, then plus 1. Okay, so I literally take out my calculator. And I'm going to do parentheses 6, close parentheses, squared, plus parentheses 6, close parentheses, plus 1. Some of you might have recognized that some of these parentheses are redundant. The problem is when you're plugging in a negative number, these parentheses are super important. So I do want you to get in the habit of using these parentheses. Okay, and it equals 43. So 43 is my answer. All right, so we're going to do this 3 more times. We're going to start with that f function again. So we've got f, and we're plugging in 5. So we're going to look at that f function. And everywhere we see an x, we're going to plug in 5. So this is going to be 3, parentheses 5, close parentheses, squared, plus 2. So I take out my calculator. I do 3, parentheses 5, close parentheses, squared, plus 2. And I get 77. All right, and then g of 15 means I'm going to be taking my g function, and I'm going to plug in 15 into it. So I've got that g function. So this is going to be 2 to the, and then instead of x, I'm going to put parentheses 15, close parentheses. So I'm going to do 2 to the parentheses 15, close parentheses. So that's 32,768. $768, is that what I said? Yeah. So there's my answer there. I'm going to go box all my answers. Okay, so on this last one, we're going to take our h function. We're going to plug in 10. So this is going to be, so we'll have parentheses 10 squared plus 10 plus 1. So I got my handy dandy calculator. 10 squared plus 10 plus 1, and I get 111. All right, hopefully that was going super well for you. If not, please leave a comment below with your questions. I love you. All right, so right here, we're going to think about adding exponentials. So if I have 3 hearts plus 2 hearts, how many hearts do I have? You're right, I have 5 hearts. That's kind of cool. All right, this is the same idea. If we have 3 5 to the x's and we have 2 5 to the x's, then we have 5 5 to the x's. Notice that the 5 to the x's does not change, but we are adding the 3 and the 2 because it's the same thing. All right, here, if I have 3x plus 2x, that is, again, hopefully you already know, 5x. If I have star plus star, what's that? You're right, 2 stars. So if I have 3 to the x plus 3 to the x, what do you think that's going to be? You're right, 2 3 to the x's. Well, there should be a times there. There we go. Oh, there should be a times over here too. There's 2 3 to the x's because there was 1 here and 1 here, and we have to add the ones. All right, so let's look over here. We have 7 times 2 to the x plus 6 times 2 to the x. So how many 2 to the x's do we have? What's 7 plus 6? 13. Perfect. So we have 13 times 2 to the x. What about this one right here? We've got 3 times 8 to the x plus 3 times 5 to the x. What's that? Can we combine those? Are these the same? No. So we're just going to keep this exactly the same. So we have 3 times 8 to the x plus 3 times 5 to the x. Or if you really wanted to get inventive, we could do 3 times 8 to the x plus 5 to the x. But if you don't like this one, that's fine. You can just stick with this one. All right, let's take a look at this last problem at the very, very bottom. We've got 7 to the m plus 7 to the n. Are these the same? Yes. So how many are there? There's one of each. There's one here and one here. What's 1 plus 1? 2. We've got 2 times 7 to the m. You feeling okay? If not, watch that part again. Or maybe look up some other videos. You got this. I love you. I believe in you. All right, we're going on to slide 5. All right, so now we're going to start adding functions. So we're given 2 functions. We're given that f of x equals 4x plus 8 and g of x equals 2x minus 12. So if I wanted to find f plus g of 6, that would mean that I need to find f of 6 plus g of 6. So this is where I take my fancy little thing. So I have 4, and then instead of x, I'm going to plug in 6 plus 8. And then it's going to be plus my g function. So I'm going to figure out what this is. And then I'm going to add it to whatever this is. So g is 2, and then everywhere I see an x, I need to put a 6 times 6, and then minus 12. Okay, so I pull out my handy-dandy calculator, and I do 4 times 6 plus 8. And I get 32. And then on the second one, I'm going to do 2 times 6 minus 12. And I get 0. So I've got 32 plus 0, and I get 32. So f plus g of 6, that's how that's read, is 32. Okay, let's do f minus g of 2. So that means find f of 2, then we're going to subtract g of 2. So this time we're going to find this number. So we're going to do 4, and then instead of times 6, we're going to do times 2 because it has a 2 in there. And then plus 8. So we're going to find this, and then we're going to subtract whatever g of 2 is. So this would be 2, and then we'd have the times 2 in there because we have a 2 inside the thing. And we do minus 12. So we're going to subtract this whole number here. So I'm going to pull out my handy-dandy calculator. I'm going to do 4 parentheses 2 close parentheses plus 8. And I get 16. And then for the second one, I'm going to do 2 parentheses 2 close parentheses minus 12. And I get negative 8. So this is going to be minus negative 8. So I'm going to pull out my calculator and do 16 minus negative 8. And that's 24. Anytime you subtract a negative, by the way, it's the same thing as adding a positive. So this is really 16 plus 8, which is why we got 24. All right, how you feeling? This is where the new stuff is. Right, let's look at this. So we're going to do f of x and g of x are going to be different now. F of x is 2x plus 5, and g of x is x squared. So now we're going to find f plus g of 3. So we're going to find each of those separately. So this is going to be 2 times 3 plus 5, and that'll give me one number. And then I'm going to add that to 3 squared. And that'll give me my second number. So I'm going to pull out my calculator. I'm going to do 2 times 3 plus 5, and I get 11. And then hopefully you know 3 squared is 9. If not, you can use a calculator. So we get 11 plus 9, and we get 20. So f plus g of 3 is 20. So let's see what happens when we do f minus g of 2. So we're going to find f of 2 first. So this would be 2 times 2 plus 5. That'll be one of our numbers. And then we're going to subtract 2 squared, whatever that number is. So we're going to do 2 parentheses 2 close parentheses plus 5. We get 9. And then hopefully you know 2 squared is 4. So 9 minus 4, which is 5. So f minus g of 2 is 5. All right. Let's keep going. Only 3 more slides. We got this. Okay. So given f of x equals 2x plus 5 and g of x equals x squared plus 2. So we changed our formulas again. We're now going to find what f plus g of x is. Notice this time this is not a number. It's just a variable. So we're just going to add the two functions. So just like we did at the beginning, we're just going to combine like terms. So we've got 2x plus 5 plus x squared plus 2. Now there's no distribution that needs to happen, so I'm just going to rewrite this as 2x plus 5 plus x squared plus 2. Now is there any like terms we can combine? X squared has nothing to combine with it. Neither does x. But what about the 5 and the 2? Yeah, we can combine those. So we have x squared plus 2x plus 7. How are you feeling about that? That would be our answer. I know it's not a number. It's because we plugged in x, so we should get an answer with x's in it. If we plugged in w, we should get an answer with w's in it. Okay, so now down here, so that was adding. Now with subtraction, there's a special thing. Now anytime we just have a subtraction sign, there's an invisible -1 right here. So we're going to take our invisible -1 and we're going to distribute it through. So we still have the 2x plus 5. Nothing exciting has happened there, but -1 times x squared is negative x squared. And the -1 times 2 is just a -2. So this time, again, we have two things we can combine. We have a +5 and a -2. This time we have a negative x squared plus 2x. We have nothing to combine with the x squared. We have nothing to combine with the 2x. And then we have 5 minus 2. Well, 5 minus 2 is just a +3. So that is our answer when we subtract it. Notice that they're not the same. X squared plus 2x plus 7 is not the same thing as negative x squared plus 2x plus 3. Just like how adding two numbers does not give you the same result as subtracting them. All right, let's try this again. So we're going to go look at number 8. So number 8, we're going to focus on this f plus g of x, and then we're going to plug in a bunch of numbers. And I'm going to give you guys a little hint about earlier. Like earlier, we plugged it into each of the functions, and then we found the answer. Here, I'm going to show you a trick. All right, so we're going to just take the two functions and combine like terms. When we have an x, that's really all we're doing. So we're having 4x minus 1 as one of our functions, and we're adding it to 2x plus 9. Well, we have things to combine. We have a 4x and a 2x that we can combine. We also have a -1 and a +9 we can combine. So now 4x plus 2x is 6x, and -1 plus 9 is a +8. So f plus g of x equals this. And notice this is just another function. This is just another thing that we can plug stuff into. Well, since we know what f plus g of x is, we don't have to plug that 1 into each individual equation. We can just plug this 1 into this equation. So now we just have 6 times 1 plus 8. So I'd pull out my handy dandy calculator, do 6 times 1 plus 8. And I get 14. Over here, we already know what f plus g is. So now we're going to plug in the 5. So this would be 6 times 5 plus 8. So 6 times 5 plus 8. And we get 38. And right here, we're going to plug in 0. So we just have the 0. So this is going to be 6 times 0 plus 8, which if you need a calculator, there's no harm in that. So 6 times 0 plus 8, and we get 8. How you feeling so far? You feeling okay? We're almost done for today. We've only got one more slide left. You got this. I know you do. All right, so let's take a look at this one. All right, so it says given f of x equals 4x minus 1 and g of x equals 2x plus 9, we're going to now find f minus g of x. So we're going to write out the two equations. So we're going to have f of x first. So we've got 4x minus 1, and we're going to subtract g of x. So minus 2x plus 9. Now remember, every time you have this minus, there's this negative 1 you have to distribute. All right, so 4x minus 1 doesn't change. However, negative 1 times 2x is negative 2x. That does not equal. That should just be minus. Minus 2x. And then negative 1 times positive 9 is negative 9. So now we can combine the 4x and the negative 2x, and then the negative 1 and the negative 9. So 4x minus 2x is just 2x. Negative 1 minus 9 is negative 10. And if you want to know that, you can use a calculator. We could do negative 1 minus 10. We get negative 1 minus 9. Sorry. We get negative 10. Okay, so now we know that f minus g of x equals that. So now we already know what f minus g of x is. We can just plug in the negative 2 in for the x. So this is going to be 2 times negative 2 minus 10. So 2 times negative 2. 2 times negative 2. That's still not a 2. 2 minus 10. Okay, we get negative 14. We're going to do the same thing right here. We're going to do 2 times 1 minus 10. Because this time we're going to plug in the 1. So 2 times 1 is 2, minus 10 is negative 8. And then on this last one, we're going to plug in a 4. So this is going to be 2 times 4 minus 10. So 2 times 4 is 8, minus 10 is negative 2. And again, you can use a calculator for every single one of these. There is no harm in that whatsoever. All right. Hopefully you guys caught that and you are doing great. I'll see you tomorrow.